Ben is going to be reading some poems inspired by Rafael's drawings, etchings, and enjoy.
Okay, well, actually that is something I'm going to do, but first I'm going to talk about bookstores, because really bookstores are basically a dying thing, and the fact that Brian has kept this place open for so long and it's doing well is a real tribute to him and to the man who founded this place. By the way, my nose runs forever, but I don't take cocaine. Ken Heyer founded this very building in 1959. A wife of his, ex-wife, shot him, but actually didn't kill him. The bullet went into a book, and he kept the book behind his desk. He was, in many, many ways, I think, like a psychiatrist, because people would come in here after a bad day. He had his desk up there, for those who you remember Ken. There'd be two chairs next to his desk, and people would come in, they'd talk about everything under the sun, he'd recommend books, ideas, and so on and so forth. And I have a feeling that that's what the bookstores are for a lot of people. They've always been that kind of refuge, a place where you can go, a sanctuary. So I talked to Brian about this, and I said, you know, I really would like to do a reading because bookstores are going out of business. Now, I made a list of bookstores, and I want you to think back and see if you know them. These are, some of them have been gone a long time. You'll just have to put up with this. It bothers my wife a lot that my nose runs forever. Arundel on Melrose, Acres of Books in Long Beach, the Bodhi Tree on Melrose, fantastic bookstore. Campbell's in Westwood, long gone.
Oh, yes.
Dutton's, Brentwood downtown and in the valley, all gone. Either Or Books in Redondo Beach, a wonderful bookstore. It had Bukowski stuff and so on and so forth. French Books on Westwood Boulevard, gone. Jean Duchenne, Santa Monica Boulevard, right down the street, gone. Heritage Bookstore on Melrose, rare books and so on, a wonderful place, gone.
You notice this is from A to Z.
Yeah.
It's alphabetical is actually.
There were a lot more, but I just... Carmiel, rare books. He was, for a while, he was down in the hotel, Miramar Hotel, and he moved to London. La Cité des Livres on Westwood Boulevard, gone. Mystery Bookstore in Westwood, gone. Nashir e Kadab,
Nashir Kitab,
that's in Farsi, but that was replaced by 4 stores, so don't worry about the Iranian American community. They are thriving in Westwood. Right, Tammy?
Yes. But there are 4 Persian books next to it.
Yeah, I know. Other Times Books, Pico Boulevard, Westwood, gone. Peltier and Lieberman, gone, rare books. Rothschilds on Beverly Glen, closed recently. Science fiction books in Santa Monica, gone. Travelers Bookstore in West Hollywood, gone. Vagabond Books, one of my favorites, moved around a lot. They're gone. They're still in business, but they don't have a bookstore. Walden Bookstore, gone. Yesterday's Books, one of my old favorites. If you knew Phil Mason way, way back, he was on Western. Fascinating person. He was a friend of H.L. Mencken. And Zeitlin Verbrugge, which was a great bookstore, which is also gone. So A to Z, all gone. So support your local bookstore. Now I'm going to read you a little bit from my friend Bud Schulberg, who died, I think, just last year, about a wonderful bookstore, probably the greatest bookstore that ever existed in Los Angeles. Now, of course, Vroman's is still out there, thank God. They were 125 years old this year. But this is the Stanley Rose Bookstore, legendary. Most of you are too young to even know who Stanley Rose was. He died in the VA hospital, by the way. Nathaniel West was one of the regulars who hung around the Stanley Rose bookstore for 40 years. Stanley Rose wasn't one of the characters in West's little time bomb of a novel, The Day of the Locust, the masterpiece. But he might have been. Pep, as West was known to his friends, loved Stanley, and though Stanley had his favorites among writers who made his bookstore in Hollywood famous, Bill Saroyan and William Faulkner were habitués. We all had to concede that Pep enjoyed the highest perch in Stanley's aviary of rare literary books. And what a collection they were. Wander in from Hollywood Boulevard, the middle western Main Street. It was right next to Musso and Frank's. Exotic establishments, you would find John O'Hara, Guy Endor, Scott Fitzgerald, Erskine Caldwell, Gene Fowler, John Fonte, a friend of mine, Joe Pagano, Aben Candle, Dalton Trumbo, Dashiell Hammett, Jim Tully, Tess Schlesinger, Sid Perlman, Dorothy Parker, and so on and so forth. Now that was a bookstore, but it only lasted, the history of it you can find on the internet, from 1935 to 1939. Stanley had all kinds of financial problems. And, but it was so memorable for Schulberg that when he did an interview with, who was the guy who did Main Street? Sinclair Lewis, yeah. He said, well, I'm going to do a proletarian novel on these marble workers in Vermont. And Sinclair Lewis looked at him and he said, no, you're not. He said, your father is B.P. Schulberg. He owns a studio in Los Angeles. You are going to write the great novel about Hollywood. And he went home and wrote What Makes Sammy Run, which is a hilarious book. Okay, so where we are today is in Brian's bookstore, and I want you to think of this place as a potential Stanley Rose's bookstore, where writers come. By the way, David Mamet comes here, and Britt Houston Ellis comes here, and Bogdanovich comes here. A number of people come in here. I should tell you that Timothy Bottoms is in the room here. He's a wonderful friend of mine, and thanks to Neil, who's so gentle, my photographer back there. If you want to check on the internet, you can see some wonderful, hilarious, and delightful things. One with Tammy Hoffs, his wonderful director, one with his son, and one that he did up in his ranch, which is just a beautiful thing, talking about his brother Sam. So it's a real pleasure to have you here too. I also have here one other friend of Los Tres Caballeros, and that is Anibal Abril. Do you want to stand up, Anibal?
All right. I thank you. Yeah.
Anibal is a playwright, a very, very good friend of mine, and we all met when I was doing my play, The Hemingway Dos Passos Wars, in 1998, and we have become great friends ever since. Rafael Buñuel, Anibal Abril, and me, with a name with not Hispanic at all. But every twice a month or so, we go to either East Hollywood, or Real Hollywood, or West Hollywood and have lunch. No. Hopefully the Roosevelt Platoon. So, and in case you're interested, Los Tres Caballeros, this is where it comes from, the Disney film. Right. So, there's one other person I want to introduce because he is central before I get to Raphael's work. And I mean, Raphael is the centerpiece of this whole evening because all the poems I wrote, some I had written before, but are directly related to his drawings, which were done first. There's only one so-called drawing in the whole thing where we needed something yellow, where he actually did one for me. And when I began to look at Raphael's work, I found it truly beautiful and moving and subtle and whimsical. It's funny, Down the Block is his father's film. Tristana, which is my absolute favorite of his father's work. But Raphael is very different from his father. His work is completely unique and beautiful. In fact, I was so moved by it that we had an exhibition of his work at our house, and about 100 people came, just as tonight. You know, so many people have come out to see him. As an artist, his work is, I would rank him with Matisse. And I'll show you why. Because I have put out on every desk, and I hope those of you in the back should get copies of the book too, so they're out there. The books are for sale, but you can take them for a test run, and if you don't want them, you can turn them back in. What I wanted to do was read some poems from the book and have you look at them at the same time, because they do match up very nicely, I think. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll make a few comments as I go along about some of the things that we did together and so on, and some of the things that, where these, hi Carolyn, we'll get you a chair. Can somebody get chairs for Lisa and Carolyn, please? Okay. Oh, there's one right up front. Okay. So let me talk about the cover first, and then we'll get to Majid and the work that he did. I guess when I saw this cover, I said to Raphael that if we could get this matched with a film, it should be up on Sunset Boulevard on a huge. The lines of it were so perfect to me when I saw them that I could only think of Cocteau or Matisse. And actually, if you look carefully, the drawing on the cover is not the same as the one inside. The conclusion that I came to when I saw this is I thought to myself, I don't know if you guys have read John Kerr's book, A Most Dangerous Method, about Freud. I happen to have the opposite view about dreams and memories. That they're really very gentle things, that they're not about killing your father, any of those things. And so when I saw this drawing, it just struck me. I remembered something that happened to me when I was in France in 1977 and 1979, which led to a divorce. And there was a very beautiful woman who I fell in love with in France, and then I came back 2 years later, and it was all over. But she still had my hat on. So I wrote this little tiny poem that says, "Seeing you again after several years, you still wear my hat." And to me that's just a kind of something lyrical and beautiful, and line drawings can do that. A painting is broad and it's big and and it's powerful, but line drawings can be more subtle, and they can reach into memory and things like that. Okay. The next few of these I'll just read straight. But that was important because it was the cover, and when I did that I thought, okay, I would like to do a book. And then I talked to my friend Majid Roshangar, who's right here, and he said, sure. He said, I'd like to do it with you. Majid is the publisher of the Persian Book Review, and he did an incredible book, Ardashir Mohassas. It was a very, very brave Iranian satirist, filled with beautiful drawings. And so I said, could you do a book like that? He said, well, Ben, that was like a major, but I could, but it might be a little problem. We might have to go back and forth to the printer a lot of times. We went back 5 times. But Majid stayed with it all the way through, and he made it this experience for both Raphael and I a real pleasure. So I just wanted to give you that background. And the work that he did, a few days ago he thought I was having a heart attack, but it was only a reflux. And we were rushing to see a film that Majid is in that is about Mohassas, a magnificent film. It's out on DVD. a person who went up against the Shah, then went up against the the provisional government and so on, and was hoping for freedom and democracy for his people. And this man, as a diplomat, has fought for that his whole life, and he keeps alive in Westwood. You can see it all around you, the spirit of Iranian Americans who love this country and yet love the place they've come from. So anyway, thank you so much, Virginia. Okay, so now I'm just going to read straight. All the best poets in San Francisco. Can we get a chair for Lisa?
No, it's okay.
You sure? Okay.
Tell which one you're doing, Ben.
This is the one. I'm going to read these in order.
In order?
Yeah. So, all the best poets in San Francisco have bad breath and bad teeth, or no teeth, or green teeth filled with cavities, while all the worst poets in San Francisco have very fine teeth, very hard teeth, white, clean, sweet breath, and perfect smiles. I learned this from a beat poet who is also a dentist. By the way, that comes from my interview with Gregory Corso, who really did have green teeth. And he wrote a book called The Happy Birthday of Death. Okay, the next one, those little men with big women behind them collapsed in the feminist era, becoming memories of men who no longer heard huge flapping thighs driving them upwards. Okay, the next poem comes from the fact that I have an astigmatism and I don't see very well. Actually, I'm legally blind in my left eye. But so when I saw these two people on the ladder, I thought they were both the same person. It only occurred to me later on that one was male and the other was female. But Freud did say that we have, and Flesses too, that we have within us the male and female components, so I guess I can get away with that. Every day, I get up earlier than I do. Meet myself on the ladder, climbing up and down. I'm in my way a lot. I can't conceive what's longer than a line. I should decide which part of me will give ground. I try to see the viewpoint of the part of me that gets up later than I do. When I meet him on the ladder, I should ask him where we're going. Thank you. The next poem is really, there actually is a lot of pornography in this book, which I won't read tonight except for one. Yeah. But it's also a lot of stuff that's pro-feminist, and I love this drawing. I think it's just an absolutely spectacular. There again, Rafael Buñuel. Every line is perfect in this drawing. The poem doesn't come near it. Setting a place. Let's see. The table setting of tomorrow on your head. The wine, the glass, the knives, the fork, the plate. The posture of your life. How will you balance everything? Your back, your breasts, your thought, your ass. It's not exactly what your mother taught about being womanly. The lines of space confine you to a face without a smile. I think that's on the edge of feminism, when women were just beginning to wake up and say, you know, we can do more, we can do anything that men can do. And to balance that table on your head, even though it's a beautiful picture, it's not a good idea. The next one's called Winter Dreams. There again, look at the beautiful color that Raphael and his printer, who tore his hair out, got in. Winter Dreams. Put a smile on my glass, put a smile on my numbness, put a smile on my winter lonely. Circus trucks jackknife, and 3 clowns in the cold chase lions through the snow. Yeah, I don't know where the hell that came from. The next one, yeah, my wife has to put up with this stuff. The next one is called As the Hunters, and it's not easy to read this, so I'm going to read it 2 ways. The first way, I'll just read it as it's written. There again, you see the dark shadows. The way Raphael does this, I mean, you have to look at the shadows of his work and so on and so forth, because it's so intricate and so precise and so carefully done. And you can talk to him a little bit about it later. I don't know if he'll say anything, but you can tell him. As the hunters. All those years they were hunting us. He was typing this. Across the mountains and into the forest on the teletype. Then one day we awoke as a news release. And they were running away as we came down for the government as the hunters. So these are guys who are up in the hills and the mountains, and in the end they own the government. That's what happened in Iran. That's what happened in Cuba. It happens all over the place. Sometimes good for a good way, in a good way, sometimes in a terrible way. But it's that moment where you actually get down there, like on the first day of the year in Cuba, you know, when you realize the country is yours and the other guys are running away. So do I have to read it the other way? You get it, right? Okay. Because they are broken. I just saw the Silver Lining Playbook, and this poem reminded me a lot of it. Because they are broken, the disconnected names on the wall light up first, because they are broken. And look at the way he did that with the wires. The next one is very true. How many of you have lived in France? Anyone here? You've lived in France. You lived in Italy, John, right?
Right.
Yeah. One of the great things about France is that it has wonderful cheap wine. I mean really, really good wine that is cheap. And if you're in your 20s and you're going through a divorce and so on and so forth, wine is very appealing. So I wrote this haiku, which has come to haunt me. It's why I have my reflux. Grenoble, 1977. That was where I was living. Famous drunks of France in the color Polaroid, me in the middle. The next one is an ingenious and brilliant piece of artwork by Rafael. If you look at it carefully, it's actually a postage stamp. But you see that it shows the movement through the wind. And so I call this relativity, and it goes, the wind is of great importance to the rain, but the rain means nothing to the wind. The next poem has been pretty widely published. I think you can find it on the internet. And this one I really, I was so pleased when I saw this drawing, because I had written this poem before, and I thought I'll never find anything that would match up. Who could do a drawing that could match up with this poem? But just wait and see how beautifully this goes together. What we walk over. What we walk over has been walked over and walked over before. It is profoundly trod upon. Generations and generations before have come this way. We come back to where our fathers walked and went off lost or angry or confused. We walk on the same sidewalks we walked yesterday. We walk past our mothers pushing us in our baby carriages. We walk past their tragedies and those of our grandparents. We walk through the memories of them. We walk where we were and where we yet have not been. We walk without knowing the ghosts who follow us. Thank you. Yeah, and you know, I wrote a book about my friend Jim Davis. Ron Watson and Sylvia Gear are both here tonight, who are both friends of Jim. And that's a book about ghosts. It's famous ghosts, but I think Tim read it. Yeah. Okay, and the last one I'm going to read in this small group is called Trois Quartiers. For those of you who speak French, I may be a little off on that. Raphael, is that close? Okay. Trois Quartiers. You will come with your hair wet, out of breath, the fullness of your breasts bound beneath your dress. You will come in the gray darkness on the bridge across Trois Quartiers, carrying your sons in their slumber. You will come through the blue lamplight, your hair an auburn sun, the steady drum of shoes upon the stair, night upon your window bathed in sweat, knowing that it matters as you rush to the door and fling off the bed with warm kisses, my life across the waters. So, actually, the next one is something that this is called Model for Artists, and you got to go move ahead by about 10 pages, I think. It looks like this. This is one of Raphael's most famous drawings. His work, by the way, has been exhibited at the Big Sur Library. It has been exhibited in Spain, in Madrid. It has been exhibited in Mexico. It has been exhibited in Japan and a number of other places around the world. And at our house. So if you all have this, I love this because it's a story that Raphael told me that he won't tell you. It's really interesting. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. She passed along a model for artists. You know, it's a subject of so often that writers write about artists and models. La vie bohème, as they say in Rent. Model for artists. She passed along from me to me to me, because the other two are dead or have forgotten, one of each. Smith was a river of heavy steel upon the Hudson. Water can be forged from cranes. So she passed from sculptor to painter to me, but me in the middle. Language allows that. I do not see her as the giant girders on the river flowing through her thighs. Smith was too abstract for love. Sex was love for him. In photographs, he beheaded women. And on the wall of water, rivers painted her until the smear she was did not exist. I got her in sketches of memory, her breath on the river as it came up through the smoke of Max's Kansas City. I'll just say that the Smith was David Smith, and the Rivers was Larry Rivers. So you can ask Raphael about that. He'll say something, but he probably won't. Okay, now we're going to move on to irregular ballet. Looks like this. Another ingenious drawing. You have to look at it very carefully to see what actually is going on. And I did write this for the, about half the poems in this book I wrote directly for Raphael's drawing. In the beginning I thought, gee, this great poet, friend of Charles Bukowski and John Fonte, and I'm writing for somebody else. But then I thought, no, these things are so easy to write for. They're so brilliant, and I get it. And it's my chance to say to the world, there's this magnificent artist in our midst right here who is putting out this stuff. And you know, it's like the world is not really getting it yet. Well, maybe after tonight they will. I hope you do. Irregular ballet. The ballet we perceive in shadows is never more than civil war with all those heads that don't add up to dancing. Twisted truths as lies. The composer saw it through for fun. Art must go on. Not that we don't know what it means, as we ourselves are disappearing. The next one is called The Professor of Logic Demonstrates Breakfast. This is one of his absolutely hilarious. In fact, somebody in this room, I'm not going to say who, said, you know, the poem's pretty good, Ben, but I really love the drawings. And she's right. So, The Professor of Logic Demonstrates Breakfast. The Professor of Logic tried to make a point. He set out on his table a small milk bottle and a large bottle of ink. Then he turned off the lights. Both bottles were shaped alike. Each was cool with the cold of night. I can feel the color of milk and the color of ink, he wrote in cream in the blue notebook, taking a swig of ink. Then he went to sleep. I get it, said his servant in the morning as the Professor of Logic licked a soft-boiled egg with his blue tongue. You can always get at, you know, professors. But on the other side, I have a poem that I wrote about Ludwig Wittgenstein. It's a lot more respectful. Is it a lizard? That's the one that was actually on the internet and so on and so forth. By the way, a number of these poems have been on 3 a.m. magazine, which is a British site that did all kinds of great things for both of us. So, is it a lizard? I love the Ice Age. They say that, physical anthropologists say that 10,000 years ago, there were only about 5 million human beings on Earth. Think about that, how nice that is. Is it a lizard that crawls up the walls of the Ice Age? Pleistocene. Can't quite say that. Men drank glacial wine then. There were bear dogs, and art on the caves was instructional. How to hunt mastodons. And if you asked them, there was always hope among the lizards that the sun would return. Okay, now we're going to move over to a poem called A Slice. And it has these two Greek statues. I put all the really dirty poems in the back. This isn't one of them. I spent about 6 months in Greece, all total. Part of it on the island of Kos and part of it in Athens. And it's a wonderful country. I hate to see them going through the things they're going through now. But when you walk around and you see, hi Oscar. When you walk around and you see the, by the way, Oscar's in charge of the Luis Buñuel Society, so if you're interested in that, he's back there in the back. But when you walk around through Greece, Raphael's been there on a motorcycle. There's just something magical about the place. You know? And when I look at it today and the situation it's in, it feels so badly. A slice of marble fell, a piece that once was Greece, dropped from the Parthenon, fragment of perfect form. I caught it in my hat before it crumbled to crumbs, an offering from Athena to the faithful. It was a wedge cracked off time, and as I held it in my palm, the wholeness of what it had been brought back a world once sublime. Okay, now we're going to move over to one more amusing Buñuel drawing called Primary Color. Looks like this. This actually refers to population, by the way, because we are at a place where we're running out of space. Primary color with balloon house. There is the physics of what is not. Only sky and ocean where no more land exists for building. Private keep out. Signs cannot explain. What's mine is mine, what's yours is negotiable. When 100 billion people have no place to go. Okay, and now I'm going to do this poem, which has a magical way of using colors. How many of you are fans of Ludwig Wittgenstein? How many of you know who he is? Ah, yeah, good. Okay, well, this is a tribute to Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein had this sort of assistant by the name of Malcolm Norman, who wrote a book about Wittgenstein, about how he came to New York and or wherever the hell, I think it was Massachusetts, and Wittgenstein decided that he would wash the dishes in the bathtub and so on and so forth. I mean, he had a very unusual view of the world. Of course, John Bercovici back there knows Wittgenstein very well, and is a great fan of his. The great John Bercovici. The meaning of blue. L.W. spoke to the class. Today I am very stupid. You will have to help me. I have something to say that sounds nuts. What is the meaning of blue? He sat at his desk and sipped his tea. Malcolm rose. There is a range of color we call blue, said Malcolm. He sat down. L.W. did not rise. The class was always held in Ludwig's rooms. The class was small, all men. A U.S. soldier rose. Sir, L.W. liked his manner, polite and direct. He was a black man. Yes, go on. In the spectrum of science, there are 7 colors: yellow, orange, red, green, blue, indigo, violet. Blue exists as something between green and indigo. The soldier sat down. L.W. smiled, that smile he had when he was truly happy. Good, that's the beginning. He was working. He put his teacup down and walked around. So blue can be sky blue, but what if the sky is black? Or a sky that settles over a pea-green sea? Or a blazing sky of red sunset? Where is the blue in that? It's still there, said the soldier, potentially. Time interrupts the blueness with the black of night or the red of sunset. He sat down again. L.W. sat at his desk. The class watched his perfect face. You are doing my work for me, he said. Is what we really see there? Is this philosophy or science? The sun and the moon together in the discourse. That made the class laugh, but Malcolm interrupted. The overlay of color depends on light, he said. Ludwig motioned his friend to sit down. Can blue be a victim? Let's be precise. There was silence, and then the soldier spoke. Blue can be a victim of the sun, he said. Or was it sun, S-O-N? There were words and comments, but L.W. heard only the tapping of the branches on the leaded window frames. The window was blueness, as Wittgenstein put down the blue notebook and closed his almost blue eyes. Now the next one's about color too. It's a lot shorter. It's a funny story. I had the very good fortune of having Jules Olitsky as my professor for 4 classes, and he was an exceptional, sensational person.
Then you missed few lines in this.
Oh, I did? Well, okay. we'll leave them out. I'm getting funny. Olitsky used to, I was at C.W. Post College on Long Island, which was the C.W. Post estate, where 5 miles from where Gatsby took place. And he was an amazing person because he would invite all of his students into his openings, so the place would be jammed with people just like tonight. And he said, but most important, he said, are the girls, because all the abstract painters are interested in freshman girls. So Jules Olitsky once gave a seminar on yellow. That's almost true. What he did was he talked about a gigantic rose painting that had a tiny little bit of yellow on the side. Just that painting, that's all he talked about. And he said that the eye would go to the mass of rose, but because there was no point to settle on, it would go to the yellow, which I think is really fascinating. And Olitsky had amazing stories. I can't tell you how interesting he was. Okay, the next one is actually for my wife. Yeah, and this is a great drawing that Rafael did, again in color, again very beautifully done by Majid and his printer. What was the printer's name, Majid?
The name, they have changed it because they measured another printer now.
Oh, I see. See, we blew out their printer.
Color on demand.
Color on demand.
Color
Yeah.
on demand.
Yeah. Headed for the Engadine. The Engadine is a magical place. It was where Thomas Mann wrote, or at least set The Magic Mountain, which is one of the greatest books ever written. And it's about health and sickness and World War I and so on and so forth. But it is also, the Engadine has one thing that it's missing. It has no poor people. There are no poor people in the Engadine. Even the servants are rich. So we were on the Glacier Express, and this occurred to me when I looked out the window. Headed for the Engadine. Workers' trains, always second class, from crumbling workers' towns they go to dirty factory plants. We watch them from the bar car of our ski train headed for the Engadine. Raphael's also a sculptor, and he's a damn good one. And I bought one of his pieces, and Majid's wife is also a wonderful sculptor. Majid, by the way, lives in Malibu, has a magnificent house filled with glass because his father was a glazier in Tehran. He started out doing broken windows, and he ended up doing the Louis Pasteur Institute. Sculpting stone. I need to catch my breath. Does anyone have any water? Yeah, I hate to sound like that guy from Florida.
That's okay.
Drink it carefully.
No, I'm okay. Sculpting stone. Carving from stone what cannot be drawn. The faults take you to the core of form. As hand and chisel find what breaks away and what holds firm. Even in the gleaming alabaster there is cubist path to hammering out the wedges and crevices, the breasts and pelvis of a woman. Thank you. The stone determines how to tap along the block and where to pound. What should be left rough, what should be smoothed round. The test for beauty is in darkness, when you touch what you have cut from hardness, to know it blind, to know it only in the mind. You know, one of the great things about sculpture is that you can, blind people get it. They can't see a painting or a drawing, but they can go to a sculpture just as they can go to your face and feel it. And I think that Raphael said something to me about the way he worked and the way he would cut and what would give way and what wouldn't give way, and the way he would round it off, and then sometimes how he would feel it, not by looking at it, but just by feeling it. So that's where the poem came from. Okay, so now we go to the two dirty poems. I'm going to take a drink of water. So when I conclude this, what we'll do is we'll do a signing, and then we'll have a Q&A, if that's okay. Then everybody can get up. You can use the bathroom. Brian will tell you where it is, right, Brian? Yeah. My Blue Sweater. I have to say thank you, Tammy, for liking this so much. But this is my favorite poem that I ever wrote. You know. And sometimes I cry in the middle of it. I don't know why. It has to go back to France. France is the perfect country. It really is. You know, we hear about freedom fries and all this other bullshit, but it's really a wonderful country. Especially when you're 28 or 29. You know. My blue sweater. Your blue sweater that you left with me for the winter when my husband came back from Algiers, when I put it on, had your smell. The smell of you when we last made love in Grenoble for 9 hours. And you never came, and I came 400 times, till the neighbors banged on the walls. Your blue sweater I'd wear on the balcony in spring when the sun came back without panties on, or anything. Just your blue sweater and the smell of you as you stayed on me so long. That husband's gone. Your blue sweater, sometimes I'd put it on in summer sweating with the smell of you. I'll never wash it out, I said. And that friend of yours, Ted, would come by and eat me like an ice cream cone, his head under your blue sweater as I looked out from my balcony, knowing you'd never return. Still, your blue sweater made me move on to another man, a doctor, who collects mushrooms in the Vercors. I let him wash out all your smell when he moved in, and the blue dye ran into my underwear and bed sheets as though you were there, and your blue sweater shrank. But there are nights when my husband's on call, alone with my thoughts. I put it on again and feel the hole in the elbow where you once were in your blue sweater. Okay, I'm going to read a tiny little, at the very end of the book, I'm going to read a tiny little haiku, sort of, and then I'm going to read Latin too, and then I'll be finished and we can stop. And this, I won't go through the story. Raphael knows the story very well, but I was thinking of the Persian bookstores all over Westwood. And so, Majid had primed me with a wonderful story about his father. How he had on one book stand the Quran, which he would read every day, and on the other, not the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, but the works of Rumi, you know, magnificent, mystical Iranian poet. So the Persian lover carries in his hat pages of the Rubaiyat. And the last poem is this one, which is another total masterpiece. 3M magazine put this out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and it went all over the place. This is a true story, mostly, anyway. And I can tell you the name, well, you know what, this is on film, so maybe I better not tell you the name of the girl. But I was in Latin 2 and in Farmingdale, Long Island, and I had this teacher. His name was William Avery. I hope he's dead. And he looked like a Neanderthal. He really did. And he was a very strange person. Everybody was sort of afraid of him. So much so that when Latin 3 came around, I was one of 2 people who took it. Everybody else had quit the class. So if you look at the drawing, it's wonderful. I mean, it's just a great picture of, you can see the ancient ruins or buildings or whatever. And I have a little Latin, and my friend Nick Goodhue made sure that I got it right. I had it wrong after Latin 2. Post coitum omne animal trist, she wrote on the chalkboard in pink chalk. The caveman erased it, knowing it was her. He, with his Neanderthal jaw and brow, taking his dose of Spengler every day. He read Oswald Spengler every day. She sat in the middle row, 3 desks back, almost breastless, legs spread slightly apart. The class was reading Cicero's De Natura Deorum, the nature of the gods. He wrote the daily text across her pink smear. She licked her lips, raised her tennis shoes up on the wire rack of the next desk up. He strained to see her panties, nothing showed. Oh, she knew about boys who came in the dark to her backyard, where they could watch her in the shower through the open window as she bent to retrieve soap. She liked to open her legs extended to where no male had ever touched. Dictum est universa mundum. That's from Cicero, not dirty. He wrote in block letters as the class began its recitation. The girl with the Irish smile spread wider as he turned to see she was pantyless. No one else knew. The Irish smile and the Neanderthal who was sweating as he wrote. Sweat dripped down his chin as the vortex of his pants leg rose. A swollen member he could not repress, and she opened wide. Girls were giggling at his dangle. He put a suit coat on, but up it went until he lost control, watching her pink lips begin to dance. The class waited for that thick cream of wheat moment. When it came, she felt it too. Then he sat down to hide behind his desk. But the girl was not finished. She rose and said the Latin to the class, post coitum omne animal trist. Every animal is sad after sex. Okay, that's all I have.